Welcome back to the show, and we're going to be talking about another Kickstarter today with Richard Starkins. But before we get started about talking about that, Richard, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself as a comic book reader and your career in the comic book industry?
How long have you got? So as a comic book reader, yeah, I've been reading comic books since I can remember, since I was very, very young. I grew up on Marvel comics, especially reprints in the UK. I got a job at Marvel UK in the mid 80s. I worked as editorial and design for 4 or 5 years there. Then I moved to America. I continued a career lettering comic books in America. I had a lot of friends at Marvel US, lived in New York for a little while, moved to California, built a studio called Comic Craft, and we've lettered just about any comic book you could care to name. What I really wanted to do was direct. So I've been writing comic books actually since... I wrote some comic books while I was at Marvel UK. I wrote things like Ghostbusters, Transformers, Doctor Who. Did I write Thundercats? Maybe not. But a lot of those franchises that were around in the 80s. And then in the early noughties, I launched Elephant Men, which was called Hip Flask at that time. And most recently, we've done 3 projects for Comixology Originals. And those would be Elephant Men 2261, Parliament of Rooks, which was created by my creative partner, Abigail Jill Harding, and Ask for Mercy, which is the project we did before Parliament of Rooks, me and Abigail Jill Harding.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter and about the book?
So the Kickstarter is what we called Season 5 of Ask for Mercy. As I just said, we did 4 seasons of Ask for Mercy with Comixology Originals, but they didn't want to continue with Ask for Mercy, even though we did, and we were told that series don't sell. Which is ironic because I did 2 series with them, 4 seasons of Elephant Men 2261, 4 seasons of Ask for Mercy. And Abigail and I already had a story that we wanted to do, which is our characters, our monster hunters from Ask for Mercy, visit WHITBY GOTH weekend, which is it's an annual event in Whitby, which, as many people know, is the home of Dracula. Bram Stoker came up with an idea of the ship that carries Dracula crashing into Whitby Harbor. It's not called Whitby. I can't remember what it's called in Dracula. It's been a long time since I read it. But everything in the story comes from the Whitby area. The Dracula in wolf form jumps off the ship, runs up the steps. It's 199 steps, which is quite tiring to climb. So in the last few years, Whitby Goth culture has centered around Whitby. And in fact, the festival, there's 2 a year now. There's one in April and one in November, I believe, or late October. And it's this coming weekend, ironically enough. So it's a great backdrop for a story which we call Vampire Weekend. And it's about a vampire from space, and our heroes are monster hunters who are monsters themselves. Becky, Ratmere, Anderson, and Budgie have a little adventure set in Whitby Goth weekend.
So how did the idea? I mean, you've kind of talked about it, but was there anything else that kind of inspired the book or the characters?
There is actually, which is Abigail herself. She has it's not cosplay. It's Whitby Goth culture is not like dressing up as superheroes for Comic Cons. It is very much tapped into Goth culture, and people put on their best finery. It can lean a little bit steampunk, but it's very much sort of dark Gothic attire. And Abigail dresses up for Goth Weekend as a crow, and she made the costume herself with some help from somebody who designed the headpiece, created that for her. So I had seen a lot of photographs of Abigail in her costume, and in fact, in her attire. I have to say attire, not costume. And she posted a lot of pictures at Whitby Goth Weekend, and I was like, well, this is where the monster of all monsters comes from. Why don't we do a story set in Whitby Goth Weekend in Whitby? And in fact, the pages we've posted online, the story of Dracula is introduced to us by Abigail in the comic strip, dressed as a crow. And she walks up the steps, tells the story of Dracula crashing into the harbor. And there in the graveyard by the abbey is somebody dressed as Dracula. So that sort of introduces us to the concept of the Goth Weekend. And lo and behold, two of our characters are also in the graveyard, and we follow their story.
Interesting. So, kind of, what are you offering for rewards for the campaign?
So, initially, when we launched the campaign, we were offering the first part one, we call it, because the issues that we did for Comixology were traditional comic book length, 20 pages each. But part one encapsulates issues 1 and 2, and we've now added part 2, which is issues 3 and 4. So in addition to that, we have sketch covers, which Abigail was here in Chattanooga. Abigail lives actually in Yorkshire. I'm from Yorkshire, but I live in Tennessee, in Chattanooga. And she came over. We already printed part 1, so we've signed copies. We have sketch covers that Abigail has already drawn. Our characters there's actually some beautiful wash drawings because it's a wraparound sketch cover. So we've offered wraparound sketch covers with original art by Abigail, single cover sketch covers, pen and ink by Abigail. And also we've still got a limited amount of Parliament of Rooks Kickstarter issues and a limited amount of Parliament of Rooks sketch covers. So there's a lot to rummage around in the treasures on our Kickstarter campaign page. And we're also doing a little Ratmere pin. Ratmere is a werewolf character in Ask for Mercy and a very popular character. So we've made a pin of Ratmere in his Whitby Goth Weekend guise, where he's actually a werewolf, but he's also disguises himself as a werewolf.
So is this your first experience with Kickstarter, or have you done campaigns before?
This is our 4th campaign. I mentioned that we did a Parliament of Rooks campaign. We did a prequel issue of Parliament of Rooks. That was this time last year, I believe, or actually, no, it was November. And before that, I've done 2 Elephant Men Kickstarters. One was a special issue called Yvette, based on the resistance fighter that features in the Elephant Men story. And we also did a Kickstarter for the last issue of Hip Flask by Ladrone. That's a series that launched Elephant Men. First issue came out in 2002. Issue 5 came out in 2025, so there's quite a wait between issues. There are 5 issues in that series, and we did very well with the Hip Flask Kickstarter because people have been waiting for that. I self-published issues 1 and 2 and 3. Image published issue 4 while we were publishing Elephant Men through Image, and I self-published through Kickstarter issue 5. So we've had a lot of success with Kickstarter. I love the platform because it gives you control over the way you present it. We use a printer down in Florida, so it's very convenient. We're able to offer pins. We're able to offer prints. Actually, Abigail's Parliament of Rooks print is also available in this Kickstarter. We did that last year, and we have a few of those available in this campaign. And I love making comics, and working with Kickstarter gives you control over paper stock, cover stock. You can do stickers as stretch goals, posters as stretch goals. And you get to do all the mailing in one busy week. So it's a great way of getting comics into the hands of people who are real fans. You know, that they know that they're supporting creators directly. And we get to give them everything they want. It's a great forum. There's a lot of communication through the Kickstarter platform. We've already got more planned for this year and next year. Yeah, I recommend it.
So what's the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout your career that's kind of helped you recently with your most recent projects?
I think, I'd say this to young and older creators is, if you work on somebody else's character for half your career or more, it doesn't help your own IP. The sooner you develop your IP, Abigail's been working with me for 10 years, and she hears this from me constantly, that it's better to develop your IP when you're young and vital and all your ideas are flowing. Because, yes, you could work on a project for Marvel, DC, or Dark Horse, a franchise. And, of course, I've worked on things like Doctor Who and Ghostbusters and Thundercats and G.I. Joe. But when you're giving your ideas to a franchise, you don't own those ideas. It can be very helpful in your early career, but the sooner you get started on creator-owned projects, the better. And I think Kickstarter is a great forum to get your projects off the ground. My friend Carla has a project called Skull Masquerade, and I think she's just preparing her trade paperback. She did 6 issues. She funded through Kickstarter. Trade paperback's coming out, and then she's starting a new series. And I really admire young creators that exploit that avenue of crowdfunding, because there's so many great projects, and creators can prove to publishers that there's an audience for their original IP by launching it through Kickstarter. Image is a great avenue too, and I was with Image for 15 years, I think. Mm-hmm. I did The Beef, I did Elephant Men, I did The Art of J. Scott Campbell, and The Art of Tim Sale through Image. They're very supportive of young independent creators. And there are other creator avenues to explore at Boom and some of the newer publishers. But having that hands-on experience, if you're prepared to do everything from, putting your book in envelopes, mailing them out, taking them to the post office, and, going to shows and promoting your titles, then the sooner you get going on that, the better. And the younger you are, the better, because, you've got the energy.
And having such a long career in the industry, what do you think the biggest change has been, and where do you see the industry going?
The biggest change is that there are opportunities to self-publish in ways that there weren't. When Love and Rockets and Cerebus came out in the 80s, they were sort of trailblazers. Pretty much the only place you could get work were at the big two, later the big three, when Dark Horse sort of rose to prominence in the late 80s and the 90s. So the big change is that there are more ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing more ideas. We're seeing, manga has taken over the bookstores, certainly in America, and in comic book stores too. When you look at the big selling comic book titles, it's things like Berserker and Attack on Titan and One Piece. And manga was not being published in English language in the 70s and 80s. So that's been a massive change. And I think it's freed people from the idea that you have to do superheroes to make comics. You don't, and I have worked on a lot of superhero comics as a lettering artist and designer. But I'm more interested in science fiction. I come from, I grew up on Alien and Blade Runner and some dark sci-fi. So there's a place for that too. There's a place for monster comics like Ask for Mercy. Parliament of Rooks is a sort of body horror comic with a kind of Victoriana Gothic vibe to it. So there's much more opportunities, and there's a bigger audience ready to read different genres, and of course in different formats, digitally and in print. I seem to spend a lot of my money on Kickstarter because I'm looking at the platform all the time, and I'm like, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Kickstarter, I'll back that. Or an Art of, Kickstarter. I think, what was the last one I backed? David Nakayama, Marvel Art of, So, the production values are incredible. And obviously big hitters, I mentioned Transformers and G.I. Joe. Those Kickstarters blew expectations away. They made millions of dollars because comic book store owners sometimes underestimate interest in G.I. Joe and Transformers, which of course now has a fan base stretching from 10-year-olds to people in their 50s, because Transformers has been around so long. And doing a project like that on a crowdfunding platform proves to retailers that there is interest. Retailers often under order because they have to take all the risk. Crowdfunding campaigns take a lot of the risk for you. So whether that is, creating a project that funds itself, that can then be taken to Image or Boom because it's proven that it has an audience and it's covered its costs. These are ways you can launch comic these days that you couldn't even 20 years ago. So social media has revolutionized comics, and it's revolutionized how to reach your audience. So it's very different, and thankfully so.
And when you're working on something and you need inspiration, is there certain creators or certain authors that you might delve into to get your creative juices going?
I just finished Do McKee, which is a Stephen King book. I've been reading Stephen King since I was a teenager, and I recently realized that he's written about 30 books that I haven't read. So I'm working my way through his library. But the thing about writing fiction. Sorry. I must have said something like Alexa. I'll unplug her. So the thing about writing fiction is you need to read nonfiction to inform your fiction. So I even though I try to read comics all the time, and I tend to read things like the Alien comics or Predator comics, because I know what that is. You know, I know that I can figure out what's going on quite easily. But I don't, you know, the problem is if you read somebody's work too extensively in comics, you make comics that sound like comics.
Mm-hmm.
So I watch ER, I watch a lot of things that are non-fantastical. I watch a lot of true crime documentaries. I'm just watching right now Homicide New Orleans. And you know, I love that kind of stuff because you see how people behave, how human beings behave in real life. Whereas if you're not careful, you can watch too much science fiction. And there's a lot of science fiction on TV and a lot of stuff that I love, like Severance and Alien Earth. But you really do need to, as a writer, you need to observe just the way you need to observe as an artist. You know, if you're an artist that only draws things that you've seen in comics, your work will look derivative.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, if you write comics and you only read comics, your work will become subconsciously derivative. But if you're constantly watching how people behave in the real world, if you're watching documentaries, then you can see how people behave, and you sort of, by osmosis, you can work those characters into your fiction. So I do read a lot of nonfiction. I watch a lot of true crime and documentaries. And I'd recommend that to anyone writing or drawing comics. Draw from life, write from life.
Good. That's a nice and good point.
Right.
So is there anything else about the Kickstarter that you wanted to make sure that people knew about that maybe we didn't cover?
Sure. The Kickstarter campaign is still going. We haven't quite made our goal yet. Our goal is 7,000. I think we're just close to 5. We're just over 4. We have a lot of items in the campaign. I want to specifically pick out comic book lettering the Comic Craft way, which is no longer available in comic retail stores because well, long story short, it's not available in retail stores, but I have it in stock. I have boxes in my garage, and they're running low. Amazingly, during the pandemic, we sold through Amazon an amazing amount of copies. So thank you for everybody who during the pandemic were lettering comics, because you bought the book. And we have a font catalog that we are offering with comic book lettering the Comic Craft way. So that's available as an add-on. Retailers actually approached me recently trying to find out if I have it in stock. I do have it in stock. So we're not reprinting that anytime soon. So it's a good place to get a hold of a copy if you haven't already.
And, you know, as part of the comic book, you know, process and creating, do you have, I want to say maybe writing is probably, you know, the one you enjoy the most, or am I wrong?
I like making comics. You know, I loved working with Tim Sale. It was his birthday today. He would have turned 70 today. I worked with him for 25 years on Batman, Spider-Man, Hulk. He did a short hip flash strip for me. And actually, we're going to do a Kickstarter collecting all his sort of noir drawings and noir strips that we briefly were considering doing a creator-owned title together. And actually, we had breakdowns that Becky Cloonan has finished. So we're probably launching that, if not this year, early next year. But I love working with people who love making comics. You know, we're working on Hush 2 with Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee this week. we're working on a bunch of comics for video games. We letter Doctor Who for Titan Comics. I'm personally a big fan of both Doctor Who and Conan, which Heroic published through Titan. I love working with Jim Zub. He's very enthusiastic about Conan. He's a great writer. Any reason to make a comic is good enough for me. Yeah. And I like writing them, because the beauty of working with somebody like Abigail on Ask for Mercy is that it's the two of us. I write it, I letter it, I design it. Abigail draws and colors it. So it's two people. And that's the great thing about comics, is that one person can make a whole comic. And all the technology that's available these days allows one person to write it, draw it, letter it, publish it through a crowdfunding program or through Image. It can be one person, it can be two people. And it's so exciting when I love collaboration. So working with Abigail on our projects is a lot of fun. She's got a lot of energy. She's got a lot of ideas. And I just love making comics.
So any, I think it looks like you might have an Emerald City Comic-Con shirt on.
This is actually Tim Sale's Hulk. It's a 2009 T-shirt. Yeah. And I'm wearing it in Tim's honor today for his birthday. But I used to go regularly to Seattle for Emerald City, not so much anymore. But I am at San Diego Comic-Con this summer and always at Thought Bubble in England in November.
Oh, nice. So as we kind of wrap up here, because I know you're a busy guy and don't want to keep you too long. Why don't you give one final pitch for the Kickstarter and where people can find more of your stuff?
So more of my stuff, everything is on Amazon. We have some print-on-demand titles on Amazon. Elephant Men Man-Made Monsters is a repackaging of the first 5 issues of Elephant Men. You can find our collections, our Image collections, Dark Horse collections on Amazon in digital and print form. Obviously, look for them at your local comic book store first. The Beef, which I'm very proud of, is a series I did with Shaky Kane. I didn't know I was going to write it, but I worked really well with Shaky Kane, and we came up with The Beef. Co-written with Tyler Shaneline, who used to work at Image. And yeah, Ask for Mercy is... Abigail and I have so much fun on Ask for Mercy because it's a very... it's an adventure. It's monsters hunting monsters. And they so happen to be hunting them in Whitby. And I love Whitby. And Abigail loves Whitby. So all that love comes... bouncing off the page at you, and we love our characters, so it's a lot of fun. If you enjoy monsters, if you're a Goth Weekender, we actually have a Goth Weekender pack for people in England, so we can ship them 5 or 10 copies, and they can save on shipping costs. So yeah, it's on Kickstarter for another week and a half or so. And we got lots of other goodies for you to check out there. But yeah, any good local comic book store should be carrying our books. I did see Ask for Mercy in Barnes and Noble as well, because Dark Horse published the physical print copies. 2 omnibus are available.
It sounds like you might be traveling, but do you have any plans for Free Comic Book Day tomorrow?
I will swing by my local store, Infinity Flux, here in Chattanooga. It's the best comic book store in Tennessee. They always have free bagels, which is a great idea. It brings people in. So I will probably check out a bagel or two. It can be pretty chaotic, Free Comic Book Day. So these days I don't participate, although we did letter... there's a new Conan Free Comic Book Day issue that we worked on. So I encourage everybody to support their local comic book store, and here in Chattanooga, definitely check out Infinity Flux because they have free food.
They know their audience.
They do, yeah. And we have a great new bagel store that provides the bagels. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I hope they're doing bagels again this year. But I think it's Brothers Bagel is just up the street, and it's just the best New York style bagels in Chattanooga. We love it.
Well, if you know that if people hear this and show up tomorrow and say they were supposed to be bagels, then
they can blame you for not cutting this bit out.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk about the Kickstarter campaign. Next campaign, if you like, we'd love to have you back and talk about the next one. And we will continue to follow the campaign as it wraps up in the next couple weeks over on our weekly crowdfunding roundup over on Comic Watch, which goes live every Saturday at noon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for getting in contact and supporting all Kickstarter campaigns. It's great that you're out there pointing people in the right direction.
Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Jeff.